Welcome to Tech Startup Stories, hosted by Natalie Binns. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the B2B startup world.
Hi, I'm Natalie Binns, and I'm the host of Tech Startup Stories. This podcast is really designed to share the unique and challenging journeys of all the people that are building small startups to scale-ups in the tech space. My background? Initially, I was in sales, and then I moved into marketing, and I've been lucky enough to work with some amazing tech companies. But my passion is really startups. And that led me back to helping tech startups set up their marketing and go-to-market functions where the budgets are tight and the resources are few and far between. So let's get into this week's podcast. Hi, everyone. Today I'm speaking with Parvez from Fortyx. And Parvez and I met last year at one of the many networking events that we both went to. And I got chatting to his co-founder, who then introduced me to Parvez. So welcome to the show, Parvez. Great to speak to you again.
Thank you, Natalie, and thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be pain-free. These things tend to be. From our conversations that we've had so far, you live in Bristol and you're a family man, and you have embarked on this amazing journey to be a co-founder of a cybersecurity business, which we know is a very, very busy industry. Tell me a little bit more about your journey. How did you get into this, and why on earth did you decide to take this leap?
I almost started an accounting startup before we did this one, right? So very, very different. And look, it was always in the card. Like whether I'd start up in cybersecurity wasn't really the thing. I really wanted to create a company and create an impact, right? That was the thing. And you have to go back in terms of my background. I've always been a disruptor and I don't like the status quo, right? So while it's wildly rewarding, it could be a little suffocating if you have that mindset as an employee, right? So you need to break free, right? And that's what I did. Like say a few years in corporate, a few years in the startup world, have seen a startup fail, have seen another startup really go up the ranks as well. And sometime last year, it was a case, look, life settled, it's too settled. So it needs to be a little bit more risky. And I took the plunge. Like it was a case of if not now, then when, right? And I've come across friends, I've come across mentors who have told me your 20s are one of the best times to start a startup because no liabilities, or you do it later in life because you have a lot more money, right? And your kids are grown up. I am doing it in my mid 30s, which apparently is the worst time to do a startup, right? but but here I am. On my journey, look, I've been in the UK coming up to 7 years, right? Most of my network either there in the US or in India. So if I want, I would love to start a company with some of my friends, but they are not really based here or they don't want to start a company at this stage, right? So the biggest gap for me was, where do I get a co-founder, right? So you go to the Y Combinator co-founder matching. That's one way to do it. It could take years, to be honest. And alternatively, I came across the Antler program, right? And that is when I met my co-founder, Tom. Okay. And the biggest value add a program like Antler does for you is finding your co-founder, right? This person doesn't need to be an exact replica of you, but they need to have the same vision, but a different perspective towards it. And that is what I found in terms of my co-founder. And look, like literally there were 80 odd people in the room. Okay. Some people, these are great in terms of being friends with, but are they really a co-founder for you? They might be a great co-founder for someone else. And it was working through that maze of people and how do you find the right co-founder? Okay. So Tom and I got along on the topic of security, right? And having told you, I almost started an accounting company. How did I come back into security? Um, I've always been a technical person. I've got a math and computer science background. Most recently, I've got an AI background as well. And security is one of those technical fields that I've always been exposed to, right? So at the previous company, growing up to almost 100 employees, people were getting worried about how do we secure IT, how do you secure your data, and we had to build up pretty much the entire system and infrastructure from scratch, right? And I do enjoy being technical. And one of the things that Antler told us, stick to what you know. The times have changed where in the 2016s or the 2017s, someone comes from the outside, shakes up the industry. That is not what people are looking for. So if you have the deep domain expertise in something, build on top, right? And security and IT was one of the big backgrounds I had. Okay. And I connected with Tom over that. And you have been in the field yourself. One of the things with security could be a really crowded, very technical, jargon oriented. Sometimes you have acronyms that no one really knows what they mean, right? If you're not an insider from the industry, you don't know what the hell that means. And our thing was, can we really make it simple, right? Security, one of the biggest things that's happening within the industry right now um, is the focus on people, right? There's a lot around human risk management. People are the weakest link. How do I stop them from making mistakes? And that is something that Tom and I rallied behind. Can we enable people in such a complicated industry, right? And we went ahead, talked to like at this point hundreds of people from the industry. And one thing was very obvious. It's always the human error. 90% of the times it's human error, right? And how do you solve for that? Okay. And we came up with a product. At this point, if I look back, just for full disclosure, we have softly pivoted into something else. It was a screen tracking AI agent that tracks human behavior and guides you real time if you're about to make a mistake. Say, click on a phishing email or do data exfiltration, send data to someone you shouldn't be, right? And we got to building this around early this year, launched it to our early design partners, some of our advisors, some portfolio companies within Antler. And we got a lot of feedback, right? The product wasn't perfect, but we got a lot of interesting feedback. We were betting heavily on screen tracking, and we wanted that to be commonplace because why we did that, there's a lot of companies in the US, they're using screen tracking for productivity, right? So maybe your screen meeting notes or automate your workflows. And we thought screen tracking has fully arrived, right? Now, coming to security, what happened is people are already a little paranoid, right? Security is security. And the whole point that someone's going to watch me track my behavior was a non-starter, right? And that is where the most of the concerns were coming from. Um, we actually got some interesting feedback from a VC as well. So screen tracking, we were a little short-sighted in terms of it doesn't really work on mobile. So if your use case is protecting people against email-based threats, phishing, for example, um, how are you going to cover that on mobile, right? Right, great feedback. And then we realized, look, we went all in terms of what the product could look like. It's a little crazy. Maybe the timing isn't right. You remember the Netflix story, right? You start with physical DVDs because the technology isn't there, right? So our vision and mission pretty much remain the same. Equip people in the world of rapidly growing AI threats. Okay. And we thought, look, emails, right? If that is what we're going for, is there a better way to do this? And then we looked at the traditional world of how emails are done. It's done at the server level, right? There's a secure email gateway that is used to sieve out all the noise, right? And that is where came the opportunity. And we doubled down on the fact that one of our design partners said, look, I already take the name of the company, but it was recently acquired by a big American conglomerate, okay? And their focus has shifted from mid-market to large enterprises, right? So there are a lot of companies that are 200, 300 people, and they're not getting the customer service they deserve, right? So there's a gap emerging, and equally, um, especially in the email world, everyone is, okay, we will protect you against phishing attacks with 99% accuracy, right? But there's another element. What about people sending emails to the wrong person? or sending data to the that they shouldn't be sharing over email, or sending the wrong attachment. I've done it a few times. I've seen someone send over the liability summary instead of an NDA, right? And not a lot of people do that, right? So while you can see the email security market is very crowded, the big players, most of them don't do the outbound security element, right? And you have to imagine, how do people interact? If someone gets a phishing email, right, or a spoofing incident, they might end up replying to that person. They might not check if the domain is right, right? And can we stop that interaction? Can we guide people against, okay, you might be doing this by mistake, or you're heavily convinced by something that is clearly spurious, and can we guide people against it? So that is pretty much the genesis of what we have slightly pivoted into. It's email security. Um, the whole point that we want to focus on the outbound initially, but people don't want outbound in isolation. The long term will bring up the inbound or the phishing protection element as well. So it's a holistic email security platform that covers all your bases, right? And the other thing, if you try and go buy the email security platform, especially in the UK or anywhere in the world, you have to set up a demo, you have to go through customer discovery. It might take a month. Even if the deployment is 5 minutes, it's a month or more to actually get your hands on the platform, right? And I can take a name, Sublime Security, right? They are an inbound security platform started right roughly 5 years ago. They took a really good approach where you can just go onto the platform, sign up with admin credentials, and you're sorted, right? So that's another thing we want to bring to the market, both inbound, outbound, come to your website, and eventually looking at product-led growth. So that's one avenue we want to explore. Okay. So there's a world in a nutshell. Uh, Email security. Yeah, you brought up the topic. It's an area that's been neglected. It might feel crowded, but there's not a lot of innovation, or innovation isn't the most common thing there, right? And especially with the technological shift that's happening, especially with large language models having much better context around human language, right? For how people communicate, you can definitely do it better, right? With much more higher efficiency. And on the other end, all the email security operation workflow, so email quarantine, right? So email remediation, your policy or rule set management, a lot of them could be highly optimized using agent workflow. So what could have taken you hours or days in a week can literally be done within the hour, right? And what we want this to be is email security and autopilot. You sign up, it learns on its own, and you solved it.
Got it. Great.
Yeah.
And obviously, in this market, I mean, I started in email security back in sort of 2004, a long time ago, 20 years, believe it or not. And, who would have thought in 20 years' time we would still be tackling the same or more advanced issues when it comes to email security? But here we are. You've only got to look at companies that are continuing to see cyber attacks, whether it's from email or other aspects of cyber. But Marks and Spencers, I know Harrods have recently had a cyber attack. These are household names, and regardless of the kind of compliant industries where they have to be super cautious, cybersecurity isn't going anywhere. I mean, yes, it is a crowded market. We know that. We know that there's many businesses, but there's space for everyone. And it's interesting that you talked about the other company where, a business has kind of got too big and they're not necessarily focusing on perhaps the customer experience or even the product as they should. What do you think is going to be really important as a founder growing the organization to make sure that that doesn't happen to you, where somebody else can kind of swoop in and take your customers in the future?
I think stay grounded and always close to your customers, right? Uh, Startups generally do that well, but when you're big enough, how do you continue doing that, right? So I'm personally an individual that okay, I'll ship incomplete stuff to get feedback from customers. And we want to ensure that ethos stays along. We solve customer needs, but really in close collaboration with them. Of course, there is saying that the customer doesn't know what they actually need. So balancing that element as well. But really staying close. A lot of the platforms, this is where security could be a little siloed, closed doors compared to other products. So if you have a project management platform, right? And they literally have a roadmap section on their website, which your end users can feedback on continuously, right? So their roadmap is driven by the customer. Okay. And obviously, you have to blend the elements of the business needs. Where do you want the product to be long term? So you have to stick to your vision as well. We believe we can bring those learnings from the other verticals that we have seen to the security world, right? What are the issues that you're facing? And what are the problems you'd like us to solve for? And if we stay true to that journey, that is what we're hoping can help us stay grounded and not really forget our earlier believers.
Great. And with the business starting in the UK, I know it's Tom and yourself at the moment. Why the UK? Why not India or America? I know you've been in the UK for a while, but I know that there's organizations out there that are trying to tackle the US market first, particularly in this space.
Yeah, and that's a good question. So we got this advice from like a law firm that handles companies migrating back and forth between the US and the UK. Now, you cannot split your focus between two countries too early. And either you go to the US right now, and for personal reasons, I can't. Like you mentioned, I'm a family man. I can't really drop everything and move to the US. So that's one reality of it. But at the same time, the UK is a good market, right? It is sophisticated enough. Large companies exist over here. People have the pain point. And personally speaking, I've built up networks over the last decade that give me that advantage in the UK, right? At some point, we have to revisit that question. Ultimately, if you're selling into one of the large enterprises, it will be multinational. It might be across 50 different countries. And how do you cater to that? That's a different problem altogether. Do you necessarily need to be in the US? Um, Partially, but not always. Like global companies have been built um, from New Zealand as well, like Australia. So why not? Some of the big companies come from that. So I don't think that would be a bottleneck for us, but US is definitely strategic. One key thing is we want to go the channel route. So basically, our partners will be selling on our behalf, and we have come across partners like with headquarters in the US, and they operate out of the UK as well. So that's also a good channel for us to expand reach to their existing clientele. That could be not only the US and the UK, but actually global, even in the Middle East. So it's how we want to use our channels and distribution. It might not be a case that US is an immediate need. The UK is a big market to complement itself.
Let's talk a little bit more about the go-to-market because a lot of the guests that we've had on this show tend to sell direct. They go through various different motions, whether that's inbound or outbound or product-led growth or account-based. You've mentioned channel. Why have you decided to kind of go down that route?
We have a lot more conviction on this. So coming from the world or the background I have, my traditional focus would have been PLG, right? Let your website and product do all the growth for you, right? Now, having talked to our advisors, having talked to you, having talked to other founders from the industry, it is a case of someone actually told me, look, he literally used the word, he wasted 1.5 years to figure out channel was the right go-to-market for them. And it was a cybersecurity product and plan. Now, it has come to a point where we believe everything else could be a distraction and you double down on channel. And there's a reason for it. So the companies that we are targeting, essentially mid-market to maybe not the largest of enterprises yet, but okay, getting on the ladder of the enterprises. Um, some of them, they don't take the decisions around technical stack themselves, right? So let me take an example. There could be a company, a legal firm, or that has 300 employees based in the UK. It could be anywhere in the UK. Um, Typically, 5% of the workforce is the IT team. Okay, so imagine like if it's a 1,000-person organization, okay, that is roughly going to be 50 people. So that is the IT budget, and a fraction of that is the security budget. So a lot of that is not kept in-house. So where does it sit? That is where the managed service providers or the IT sellers or the value-added resellers come in. Okay, they literally have handle the outsourcing of it. And if there's a company where there's no CIO or even a CISO comes much later. Okay, they would have taken the decision. Okay, there's a new email platform. We can use it because it works better for us. It works better for the client. The COO or the CEO or the CFO on the business don't want to get into the nitty-gritties of it. They have built trust with a partner for the last decade or more, and whatever they say, they are the extended VCSO or the VCIO arm, right? Now they are taking all the decisions for them. Now, if I end up, if I go to the CEO of a business, they would have no clue. They're not even the buyer. So effectively, the managed service providers are the buyer for us. And how can we make life easier for them, get more done with less, or are they able to boost revenue by serving more clients? That's something that we're trying to do. Can we help managed service providers operate more efficiently or take on more business? So very clearly, the the nexus around the decision making around the security stack, that's where you're going to sell in, and that's for us is the channel. So that is how it has come to conviction that it has to be channel for us.
It makes sense. It makes absolute sense. And yeah, of course, you and I have had a few conversations on that. But I think it's interesting. So many people have to go on that journey to learn. So if you've already started out with an understanding that that's going to help, adding in a direct channel later on is just going to help, increase your growth. But as we know, that can be more expensive. So I think this is definitely an interesting and proven approach for the cybersecurity space. I want to take you back to what you said a little earlier about Antler and meeting Tom and this kind of speed dating exercise that you guys went on to kind of meet each other. How did you even find out about Antler? What was the process? Tell us a little bit more about that.
I think so. It's a common model, right? For example, you would have heard of Y Combinator in the US. They're the entrepreneur first who were the early starters in the UK. Antler came much later, but more recently they've expanded and become a very familiar name within the industry, right? Now, when I had made up my mind, I'm going to start a company and I want to find a co-founder and I wanted to do it in an accelerated manner, the options for me are limited, right? So if you want to go to a top tier program, there's Antler, there's Entrepreneur First, and I didn't have 10 options. I really wanted to go to one of the best programs out there. And in fact, I was aware of the name. And funny enough, it was actually 2 years ago. Someone from Antler had reached out. I wasn't ready then. But a year later, they reached out again. I thought, yeah, why not? Let's do this. And, but yeah, it's just, I would say they were becoming a more known name within the industry. And it kind of showed up on my feed one day. So gradually became more and more aware of the program.
And when you started the program, talk us through a little bit more about the process that you guys go through to get to know each other as not just you and Tom, but to kind of figure out other people within the program, and the kind of things that you do to then take it to the next step within that program.
Absolutely. So, look, the answer program for us, autumn 2025, that started in September last year, right? And there was still a period, a 3 to 4 month period before the program started, that I was aware I was going into Antler. And Antler back then made this thing a conscious effort to, okay, there have been people selected on the program already. Okay, let's try and bring them together and let's see if they want to get started even before the program has officially started. Okay. And look, these are top-notch individuals, not blowing my own whistle, but roughly 5,000 people apply, 2% get in, and 80 people in a cohort. That is what we end up with. That is what is day zero for you, right? And Angela is pretty much like that day -1 to day zero journey. It's not the 0 to 1. 0 to 1 starts after that. Okay. What Antler do really well, without taking names at this moment, they focus a lot on the founder experience. They would never tell you, okay, that's a great idea, go and work on it. They'll never give you the idea or direction. You are left in a playing field where you have to go and speed date the other 79 people in the room. Okay. They will obviously guide you in terms of, okay, you guys come from healthcare. Why are you trying to do consumer tech all of a sudden? Okay, so those nuggets of wisdom, that is where it came from. You're not it's a great idea, but you're not the right team for it. If you are the right team for it, prove to us how you're the right team for it. Do you have advisors or a network in it, right? So that was the kind of guiding advice. And we were asked more questions than given answers. Why you was the first question. Why you, right? Why now? People would have done it 5 years ago, or they might do it in the future. Why now is the right time for it? Okay. And the market, or the founder market fit, as they call it. Is it a big enough market? Is the solution right for the market? Is the market ready for it? Right. So there was a lot of things like founder fit, uh, market founder fit, and timing. Right. So a lot of things that were there to guide us. We had fun events as well. So we had social nights after work. We and you naturally, the people tend to form those groups. You have the support systems within Antler. They could be um, folks from Antler themselves, or it could be other groups of founders. And the key thing is, I met a lot of people that I'm still in touch with. Um, and part of the support system, they would be great friends, but potentially they might not be the founder for you, right? So you have to keep your options open, keep your ears open. Building your company with friends is lovely, but friends might not be the right founder for you or the company, right? So in a nutshell, the program was really tailored towards people coming together. We had sprints on the weekend. So goodbye weekends, random people come together. You haven't talked before, but here's something, do something, create something out of thin air, right? And that's the way of exploring. Can you work together as a team, right? So Tom and I went through that exercise. We did sprints together. Uh, okay, we both want to do security, but can we even work together? Can we commit the next 10 to 15 years of our life to this? Okay. We have the same vision, right? And how it worked out for us is, as I said, Tom and I, as you picked up, are very different individuals. We communicate very differently, uh, but we are super aligned in terms of where the company needs to be, what the vision is. The vision has never changed, right? So how do you find your principles? How do you find people who share the same principles and guided by the ecosystem, guided by other people, guided by the Antler um, partners and the team as well? How do you find your way, right? And it's brutal for a lot of people. So some people describe it as Love Island combined with The Apprentice. So there's a fair bit
That
of
sounds horrendous.
so there's a bit of drama. It's not a TV show, that's the thing, but I think that I'm pretty sure some part of it could be televised, right? So there's drama, people falling out, breaking up. But the constant thing was progress, and progress could be you have a prototype on Figma, but technology has changed right now, and you can have a prototype using any platform you use. But equally, exploring the founder relationship, right? That is progress as well. Have you spent time to get to know your founder in more detail? Okay. And then there's the other side. If something isn't working out, you're in a team, you get along well, but there's no progress, right? There's a lot of motion, but no progress. What's happening then? So you have to take those hard decisions where, okay, this team has no future. If I want to start a company, I need to move on, find another co-founder, right? So there's the brutal side as well, where it could be, fine, this is not going to work out. So how soon do you move on? And that will count it as progress as well.
That sounds like a lot of fun, but at the same time, a little scary. What do you think have been the biggest surprises for you personally on this journey?
That's a tough one. So I have seen this before, and I'll express the feeling and what I'm realizing, but I've seen it through the lenses of the founders I've worked with in the past, right? Now, it's like your baby, your company is like your baby. Now, when you do start your own company, it consumes all the time, if not all of your time, uh, left as part of your daily routine, right? You're constantly thinking of it. What's next? Even at like 3 a.m. in the night, if you're awake, you're thinking about, okay, like I need to do this to get my company to the next stage, right? It completely consumes your life. Okay. I had seen this, but never felt it. And that was another thing. The journey from, or the transition from being an employee to a founder is that big change where it completely consumes you, right? It is not, okay, I'm not going to do a 9 to 5. I don't, I'm thinking about culture. I don't want my people to be overworked. That's out of the window. Like you're literally in it day in, day out. And that was the thing. Of course, now how do you balance that with your personal life, with your duties as a dad? That is difficult, right? And it works in a way, but you have to be cautious. So one of the partners at Antler told us, look, we went through this exercise. Now coming back to your previous question, why do you want to start a company? Is it okay? I'm going to create my legacy, or I'm going to create generational wealth, or I'm going to create impact that the world has never seen before. One of the options on this list was flexibility, right? Flexibility is what you make of it, but flexibility is not the reason you start a company, right? And it's just, as I said, it consumes you. But what is flexibility for you, right? You want to work at 10 at night, maybe take a break, 4 hour break in the afternoon, but it might not work well for you because your customers are active at that hour. So there's a lot of juggling, balancing, prioritizing that needs to happen. Of course, yeah, there are limited hours in the day. So you have to really do with that.
Indeed, indeed. And balancing that is a challenge. It is all consuming, and I can understand from everybody that I've spoken to so far that that passion that you have for your business is very different from being an employee. And although, I've met some very passionate employees in my time, I think having the control of your own destiny, so to speak, although you don't have full control, changes your input. But you mentioned something really interesting, and you could have talked a little bit about the culture of your business. How you behave as a founder, um, is probably going to be slightly different to how you're going to expect employees as you start to bring people on. What have you and Tom discussed in terms of what your vision for the company is when you start to hire and scale up?
Yeah. So again, great question. It is, as a company itself, I think we discussed this before. Like, we want this to be a place where people come and feel alive. Of course, they might be an employee, but they come here to do the best work of their lives, right? They feel Monday morning blues don't exist, right? That is the feeling that employees should have. It is just like some adrenaline rush or an over-consuming feeling of joy when they work at Fortyx, right? And that is where you want to be. Of course, I've seen, okay, we could be hiring someone who's 20-year-old. We could be hiring someone who's just started a family, or we could be having a very experienced hire who bring loads of experience to the business. And everyone has different priorities as they go through different phases of life, right? And you want to accommodate that, right? That is something we're very clear from the onset. We want diversity within the business, um, both in terms of their background, but also the different walks of life they come from. Okay. And yeah, like a senior candidate shouldn't have to compete with a junior candidate, right? Everyone has their own place. And how do you create a culture that gives everyone the right path or the suitable path for them to succeed? Okay. And that is what we're really after, right? In terms of values, look, uh, if you want people to be genuine, right? They don't have to come into as soon as they walk to the office door or on a Zoom call, they have to put on a mask. We don't want something like that. And the other thing that we have definitely talked about, I do agree in the concept of um, building a professional team over say, a family like business. But on that scale of, okay, this is super professional to super friendly, I think we lean towards the friendly side. Okay. Can, and this is learning from my first manager, like this goes back 10, 11 years ago. Um, the most amount of hours in a day, right? Or your 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, whatever, you're spending more time in the office or with your colleagues compared to your family, right? So you have to treat that time like that. You have to have colleagues who might be like friends, right? You can go and grab a coffee with them. You can discuss stuff that's working well or not working well, right? And that is necessarily, or most importantly, the kind of culture we want to have, right? People feel supported, people feel alive, and then there's just self-motivated. It's not that I have to go and hang a stick with a carrot. You do this, you get this. So we don't want that, right? So self-starters, super excited about the vision and can really get behind the cause of the company.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely like that vision. And I think you're absolutely spot on. People do spend a lot of hours in their work environment. And so making it a pleasant and challenging and fun environment is very important, especially today.
Yeah.
What do you think have been the biggest lessons that you've learned on this journey so far? I get that you're sort of in year one, but what have been the biggest kind of challenges and lessons learned?
I think it is difficult. Like this is some of the hardest or and if not the best work of your life you'll do. And I think it's persistence, right? It's grit as they call it. Like how do you stay persistent to what actually got you started in the first place, right? And absolutely having a self-belief system that you can do this, having your co-founder support system, right? We're gonna do this together. Those are the things that you have to have in place to actually make the best of the journey, right? And this is with any company that's getting off the ground. Rally people around the vision that two people in a dorm room or random meeting room had. Okay, we're gonna take on multi-billion-dollar companies, right? And beat customers, beat investors. How do you convince that? Okay, they are supposed to take the shot on me, and it comes from that underlying deep delusional belief in yourself that we're gonna pull it off, right? I think that is the thing, the self-motivation, the self-awareness as an individual, but also as a co-founding team. You really have to power that through. The energy has to come from, no one's gonna say, okay, here's a 500K contract and get done with it, right? So the self-motivation, having a support system.
Right. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic to speak with you today. And I am excited to watch that continued journey for you and Tom in building Fortyx.
Absolutely, it's been a pleasure. And yeah, some really good questions. I really enjoyed that.
That's it for this episode of Tech Startup Stories. Have a story you'd like us to share or a topic you'd want to cover? Reach out and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.